Buddy, Choke from ChokeHub.com here. I have a developer at work that's relatively new to object-oriented programming. I've also realized that in some of my videos that I've been posting up, I've been throwing words like encapsulation, polymorphism, and inheritance around. And not everybody really understands what those mean. And so I decided that I was going to create an entire video series all about object-oriented programming, and this is the first video for that. So Jaron, this one's for you, buddy. Object-oriented programming. It was first introduced in PHP 4. A lot of people like to argue that fact, but it really was in 4. Now, at that time, it wasn't very expansive. And so there were only a few features, but it was available in 4. The major concept of what we call object-oriented programming in PHP today was introduced in version 5. And I've heard that the community has plans to modify the object model structure in a better way for PHP 6. In the entire video series, we're going to be using PHP 5.5. Now, if you have a good understanding of OOP, then you can create great architecture for any PHP applications. You only need to know some of the basic principles of object-oriented programming and how to implement the concept of OOP in PHP in order to really use it. Throughout the entire video series, I'm going to use the abbreviation OOP for object-oriented programming. Now, the video series was designed for both beginners and middle-level programmers who want to learn advanced concepts of OOP in PHP. We will explore all aspects of OOP in PHP from the beginning. In every video, we will cover some best practices. If you're a complete beginner for OOP, please go through every video of the entire series carefully. If you have some knowledge about a specific concept of object-oriented programming, then you can go directly to the next video of your choice. However, I do recommend you watching the entire series from start to finish. So, basics of OOP in PHP. Object-oriented programming is really nothing but a technique to design your application. And your application could be anything, web application, Windows-based application, it could be a CLI application, it doesn't matter. OOP is a design concept. In object-oriented programming, everything will be around the objects and the class. By using OOP in PHP, you can create modular web applications. We can also perform any activity in the object model structure. There are many benefits of using OOP over the parallel or procedural programming styles. And later in this video, we'll cover some of the basics of objects and classes and its implementation in PHP. But first, since we're talking about OOP, we need to know, what is an object? And there are a lot of different definitions for the word object as it relates to PHP and programming in general. And I think I have the best definition, and that is, anything in the world is an object. Look around you right now. You can find a lot of objects. Your laptop, PC, your car, everything is an object. In this world, every object has two things. They have properties and they have behaviors. Your car has a property, color, and brand name. And it has the behavior, go forward, go backward. If you're able to find properties and behaviors of real objects, then it will be easy to understand object-oriented programming. Now, in the real world, different objects have different properties and behaviors. For example, your television has property size and color and has behavior turn on, turn off, right? If you observe carefully, then you can find that every object has some property and behavior from another object. And this phenomena is called inheritance. For example, a car object has property and behavior from engine object. Okay? Objects in programming is similar to the real world. Every programming object has some properties and behaviors. For example, if you have an object for an interest calculator, then it has properties interest rate and capital, and it has the behaviors simple interest rate calculation and compound interest calculation, right? Now, interest calculator has some properties and methods from calculator object like addition, multiplication, etc., etc. And so that's what an object is. Now, what is a class? A class is something that defines your object. For example, your class is car, and your Honda car is an object of the car class. Like the object explanation here, we'll take an example of the real world, and then we'll move further into programming definition. So, blueprints of the object is class. Class represents all properties and behaviors of the object. For example, your car class will define that the car should have color, number of doors, and your car, which is an object, will have the color green and 2 doors. Your car object is of class car. Or in terms of programming, we can say that your car object is an instance of the car class. So structural representation of your object is your class. Okay? Now let's take an example of the programming world. Let's go with the interest calculator again. The interest calculator is an instance of the class interest calculator. Interest calculator class defines properties like capital rate and behavior, like simple interest calculation and compound interest calculation. Your interest calculator object has property rate as 3% and capital 300 USD. So, you are describing your class definition of rate by giving it a rate value equal to 3% and capital $300 in your interest calculator object. Now, in your object, when interest calculation behavior will be applied, it will take your rate of interest and capital and provide you the result. Again, your interest calculator class will inherit the definition of its property and behavior from the calculator class. Okay? Now, I know a lot of people for many years have been stuck on procedural style or parallel style programming. They don't see the advantages of using object-oriented programming. But there are various advantages of using OOP over the procedural or parallel style programming. And here are some of the basic advantages, and I'm just going to go over 4 of them, but these are some of the basic advantages of using OOP techniques. The first thing is the reusability of your code. So, using OOP techniques for creating your web applications, it gives you greater reusability. For example, you've created a calculator class for one project. Now, you can take that class and use it in your new application. Okay? You can use that same class within the same application multiple different times and multiple different ways. You can reuse your code, and that files the dry methodology, so don't repeat yourself. If you've already built it, why reinvent the wheel unless you absolutely have to? Number 2, easy to maintain. Applications developed using OOP techniques are easier to maintain than normal programming. So let's take an example of an interest calculator class. So suppose your business needs to change the calculation logic, right? They want to add some charges if your capital is less than $200. Just think about if your application were big and developed using normal procedural style programming. So first, now that you know you need to change the calculation logic, with procedural style you need to analyze at how many places have you actually calculated the interest. And then you need to go through and change each of those. But with a class, you need to change the calculation in one place. That's it. You just maintained it and upgraded your calculation logic. Now, the third thing is a good level of abstraction. Now, abstraction means making something hidden. By using OOP techniques, you are abstracting your business logic from implementation. It will provide you greater ease in development and in life. So again, let us take an example of the interest calculator. If you've created the class for interest calculator and your team is going to use that class, now the only concern you have is about how the calculation will be performed because you've created the class. Your team member is always going to have an understanding that if they set rate and capital property and apply interest calculation methods, then it will return interest. Now, number 4, molecularity. And that's a strange word, right? Molecularity. If you're creating a separate class for every problem you have, then you're making it modular. If someone needs to change something in the business logic part of your application, then he'll always go, or she'll go, to the business logic code itself. All right? Now, let's talk about the implementation of OOP in PHP. Now, like I said before, objects are an instance of classes, right? So, what is a class again? A class is a blueprint of any object in OOP. And so a class is the first alphabet for OOP. In PHP, the creation of a class is simple. You create the class using tag class. And in the class block, you can define your properties as class variables and functions as a class behavior. So let's create a class for an interest calculator and define its properties like rate, capital, duration. And then define its behaviors like calculate interest. Okay, and I've already created this class on my machine here. So here we go. Now this is a very simple and basic class to calculate interest. So let's explore all the aspects of this class. First, we create the class by using the class keyword. Here it's class interest calculator. And that is the class block. You can define all of our properties and methods of our class inside the class block, so in between the two brackets. Any variable started with the var keyword is property of our class. Commonality, we can say that these are variable of class also. And the functions are methods of this class. You can design your own class with your own variables and functions. Now, objects in PHP. As I've already discussed, an object is an instance of any class. So we'll take our interest calculator class as an example, and create an object of the class is very easy. We create the object of class with the help of the new keyword. Following, I've already written this here, so So right here, we do variable calculator equals new interest calculator. Now this generally won't work unless we include it, right? This is still not completely object-oriented programming. But in this declaration, we're creating an object of our class interest calculator, right? With the variable calculator. And so now, calculator is an object of class interest calculator. Next step is to set property or variable of object calculator and perform calculations of interest. And so all of that I just got rid of is how we do that. So here, our object of our class interest calculator is the variable calculator. In the next 3 lines, we set the variables. So we set the rate, the duration, and the capital. And finally, after setting all the required properties, we call the method calculate interest, or the behavior. Okay, and that is really the basics of object-oriented programming. Super basics. In the next video, we're going to go a little more in-depth coverage on OOP theory, specifically classes and objects in OOP. So I hope you learned something. Be sure to like and share the video. Check us out on chokehub.com. You can check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. Check us out on GitHub. If you're on Arc on the free node server, you can check us out in the ChokeHub channel. Have a great day and happy programming.